Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it's time.
I'd like to call this special meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Donald Hewish.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tempore Margaret Morales. Present. Councilmember Mitch Lindemann.
Here.
Councilmember Dania Acosta. Present. Councilmember Ray Shelton.
Present.
Councilmember Michael Valdenegro.
Present.
Councilmember Jose Grijalva.
Here.
City Manager Ana Urquijo. Present. City Attorney Dennis Fitzgibbons.
Present.
City Treasurer Luis Pedrosa.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3, persons wishing to address the council in writing or verbally on any item not on the agenda. Do we have anybody this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Please. First, we have Steve Helfrich. Mr. Helfrich, please. And I also have you for item 4A. Also. Please.
Steve Helfrich, 1330 North West Avenue. An update. Very close to place by it now, 60 years. Look at it, I think we should be able to see some moves. I don't know if anyone has seen these where the community on screen. And I want you to all try to see that movie from my show on the 12th about ants. And I'm hoping that the mayor could see to declare November 12th. Don't kill anyone today. Yeah, peace with our. Mayor, I did confirm that the wildlife law base, the Douglas basin basically drains to once. So we are going south. I did have 2 things where,
Please.
I do have 2 things about the Superfund sites. that
Thank
I
you.
researched yesterday. I don't know if they're gonna help, but.
Thank you.
I think the idea is that these are visual aids again for everybody,
Thank you.
and then Mayor, you get AP.
Thank you.
This is AP. I gotta hurry.
Yep.
Each one of those represent 2,500 people. And on the A, that AMA is about water and water management. And then as a community, we have an obligation to make sure that we have water. And I would propose that we have a municipal committee to set up a municipal fund, a municipal policy directed so that in 2 years, Frida, McNeil, Douglas, AP, all have an idea of how the water is going to be used and how we can go for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Diana Lamar. Please. Ms. Lamar. And I also have you for item 4 also.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is questions probably. I apologize for this. I just wanted to briefly speak on the issue of water, since we have something on the ballot in the decade. Without active management of groundwater use, those with the deepest pockets, the most wells, and biggest pumps will always have access to water, exposing the rest of us, our homes, businesses, jobs, and rural way of life to dry wells, land fissures, and higher water costs. Currently, water in the Douglas Basin IMA is dropping 1 to 2 degrees on average in a year. There are no external sources of surface water to increase the amount of groundwater in the basin, which is replenished only by rain, snow melt, and a very small amount of snow wastewater. In 1980, a portion of irrigated farmland was carved out of the Douglas groundwater basin to become an irrigation non-expansion area, INA. This meant that no new acreage, 2 acres or larger in this area, could be irrigated with the intention of conserving groundwater. Yet, even this restriction has not kept the Douglas Basin from developing an overdraft problem, and it is getting worse. All efforts to stop the overdraft have failed. An effort to establish a water district in the Wilcox Basin went nowhere. The AMA will not make local entities ineligible for receiving state or federal infrastructure improvements like stormwater, harbors, and retention basins. I personally encourage everyone to vote yes on the proposition.
Thank you very much. Item number 4, discussion decision on approval of ordinance A, second reading of ordinance number 22-1151, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, authorizing the donation of parcel 407-69-004A comprised of 80 acres of land and certain utilities to the United States for the construction of a new commercial port of entry, and authorizing the execution of the donation acceptance agreement with the General Services Administration, establishing severability of components of ordinance and establishing an effective date thereof. Mr. Kehoe, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This, of course, comes to you as the second and final reading under our new ordinance structure with the charter revisions, with a 30-day waiting period before it takes effect. So we have been in touch with GSA recently. Last week was our technical team meeting, and we discussed this item. This comes to you as second reading with minor edits. And it is still going through the the processing requirements of GSA as well. So there is a chance that there may be minor non-substantive grammatical and spelling changes. That's what the review is that is underway with GSA currently. But the substantive issues through their legal officers have been approved, as has our legal review approved as well. So we are comfortable with all of the substantive items on this donation acceptance agreement to move forward. And again, we are planning a type of signing ceremony sometime during the month of November, once GSA finalizes their requirements for finalizing on their end as well.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Shelton.
I move that the mayor and council approve the second reading of ordinance number 22-1151 by number and title only.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shelton and second by Mrs. Acosta to approve the second reading of ordinance number 22-1151 by number and title only. Any discussion, questions by the council?
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Lindeman, please.
this question is for Mr. Keel. When you said that there were some minor revisions, what were they?
The actual agreement, did we can pull those up. I don't know if Dennis, do you by chance have that document open to show the minor revisions from between the first and second reading, please?
I think most of them in the agreement were all kind of grammatical changes. I know in the ordinance, one time I just changed how we referenced the agreement, but that's about the only changes I recall from the first and second reading.
So there wasn't really a substantive change?
Nothing
No, no.
substantive, no. And we expect for them to continue to come through non-substantive. At least that's what GSA said. They typically do that in that last process. They just have that division that goes through with a fine tooth comb on grammatical changes.
So
Please.
if I may ask,
Yes.
can you summarize the agreement? I know this is a second reading, but just for I guess my information and the public, can you summarize the agreement that we're having before us this morning or this afternoon?
Of course, yes. So the donation acceptance agreement provides the first official step of our momentum towards the port of entry. We have been working on this, I'm going to say, for almost 10 months. And going close to a year on working on this, and donating 80 acres was more than just a donation in terms of what we were trying to accomplish. It was, I didn't think it was going to be that complex, but with the agreement, our terms on the provision of temporary utilities for the build out of the future port of entry. So there was so much work to be done to establish, and for us to come to an understanding and feel comfortable that the city would be able to provide within an 18 to 24-month period from the date of this final document, temporary utilities for the site. And that's really what held up the donation. It wasn't, we don't want to donate or the language to donate. It was the technical team that met every 3 weeks, at least for the last 10 months, to try and secure with all of the utility providers a way to direct the provision of the temporary utilities to include electrical, non-potable water, and temporary sewer provisions. And that probably is the least of the provisions. The power and the water obviously are our first efforts, and that's what's embedded in here. And then with, of course, permanent provisions in the longer term scale with 48, at least 48 months to align with the future final construction of the port of entry. So those are the reasons that we had many of the delays, and trying to secure agreements with utility providers to make this as simple as possible without having to come to council with an agreement that APS had a sub-agreement and that the city of Douglas Water and contractors had another sub-agreement. We had to really work through those issues, and we are comfortable now that the plans that we have worked so hard on for the last 10 months does in fact secure a way and funding sources as well to provide temporary utilities for the start of the project. And of course, the project has many other things underway. The architects through GSA that have been contracted have already produced one conceptual design, and 2 more are expected. So everything's working to align with timetable and timelines. And we have an expectation that stars will align and we will all get to the timeline expected to provide this. So this is the reason that this took as long, as why it seems so much more technical than just a donation of land, because the temporary utilities were the primary concern of GSA to say, we expect a shovel-ready parcel to come in and get this project started and have the utilities we need to do so.
And this is the preference of GSA. So,
Correct.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's correct, Mr. Lerman, in their feasibility study on being able to expand the port. This is the solution that they came up with.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council?
Mayor.
Yes, Mrs. Acosta.
Just want to make sure that we have the clause in the agreement, and it's quite lengthy for me to read it right now, but in case the port does not come to fruition, do we get that property back? I believe that was a citizen concern from a previous meeting. Do we have that in the agreement?
Yes, we've heard that, but it's my understanding that it's there in the agreement.
Were you able to hear that question, Dennis?
I heard, yeah, Councilmember Custis, I was trying to get to it. There is a provision in here that if it does not go forward, the land returns to us. Was that the question, Anna, that whether the land comes back to us?
Yes, is there any other reason the Ford project fails to move forward, the parcel, the 80-acre parcel returns to the city?
There's a provision in the closing in section 12 that talks about if the land, if everything doesn't close on 2020, by 2026, and that date's going to be added, that it specifically says, provided however that the closing has not occurred on or before blank date of 2026, then the agreement shall be deemed to have been mutually terminated by the parties, and therefore the land would return to us.
I believe I
Is that
found it.
understandable?
Yes, I believe I found it under
Section 4.
section 4. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? We have a couple members of the public that would like to speak to this. We'll start off with Diana Lamar. We could, please.
Hello. Mayor, council, and staff, it is Diana Lamar. I wanted to read a section from something called the NEPA Desk Guide. If you're not familiar with this, it is the policy that the GSA is to follow. And I wonder who besides myself has read it. I encourage everyone in front of me and behind me to do so. It's a legislative document, and I found it to be both inspirational and aspirational. So from the NEPA Desk Guide, which stands for National Environmental Policy Act, Section 101 of the Act, it is the continuing policy of the federal government in cooperation with the state and local governments and other concerned public and private organizations to use all practical means and measures, including financial and technical assistance, in a manner calculated to foster and promote the general welfare, to create and maintain conditions under which man, woman, persons, and nature can exist in productive harmony and fulfill the social, economic, and other requirements of present and future generations, and that the nation may fulfill the responsibilities of each generation as trustee of the environment for succeeding generations. Assure for all Americans safe, hopeful, productive, and aesthetically and culturally pleasing surroundings. Attain the widest range of beneficial uses of the environment without degradation, risk to health or safety, or other undesirable and unintended consequences. Preserve important historic, cultural, and natural aspects of our national heritage, and maintain wherever possible an environment which supports diversity and variety of individual choice. Achieve a balance between population and resource use, which will permit high standards of living and a wide sharing of life's amenities, and enhance the quality of renewable resources and approach for maximum attainable recycling of the renewable resources.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, can I just correct one thing I said? It's in section 4. The first reverter clause is in section 12. If we don't complete the agreement. But section 4 specifically says in the second sentence, should the United States fail to commence construction of the land port of entry serving commercial vehicles within 5 years of the execution of this agreement, then ownership of the entitled to the property and temporary and permanent utilities shall automatically revert to invest in the donor. And that the donor is the city of Douglas.
Thank you, Dennis. We also have another citizen, Mr. Helfrich. If you'd like to also address this item, please.
And Steve Butler, if you agree with what's happening, but this is very- I want to go back once again to my letter to make sure everybody understands what my letter says to the GSA. I know you've read it all, so you all brought the copy. But basically, what it says is that I'm asking them to do a T-norm study. And a T-norm study is technically, it stands for a technically enhanced, normally occurring radioactive material. And essentially what it is when you scrape all this material together from the mine and you cook it, what happens is you condense it and you condense the radioactivity. And what I'm asking them to do is to at least study it. It's not the slag heap that's the problem. It's what they bury underneath the slag. And I just hope that our people wouldn't take those bricks and build their houses up. But anyway, that's what I'm trying to do. That's number one. And number two, I'm asking for an enforceable transportation plan that limits, if we are building the port 5 miles away from our town, because of the because of the toxic materials that are bringing through, the mines are bringing through the port. That's one of the main reasons they're doing that here. Then we should have a enforceable transportation plan that limits the traffic of toxic chemicals and heavy machinery east of 191 and west of Washington Boulevard. So it doesn't make any sense to put the port out there and then bring the materials right down to Pan American. So those are my two hats, the environmental, so that the GSA has a duty and has an obligation to take the surrounding areas into consideration. And we have a toxic waste there that's right in the middle of the Whitewater Draw, which is our main artery of our fresh water. I am not talking about groundwater pollution. I'm not talking about heavy metals leaching into the plant. I'm limiting that. I want somebody else to bring that up. But what I really want to do is let's study it. Let's get it onto this environmental impact study and get this thing moving. If we can take the ownership of the from Phelps Dodge to somebody else, we can get the brownfield grants and pay for the study. And let's try. And once again, I'm asking you to postpone this vote until the draft environmental impact study comes out, and we as a community can figure out how we deal with that. And if we don't do that, I'm going to be gone. Most of the council will be gone, and it's your grandchildren, my grandchildren, that are going to pay for this. And this is the time to do it. We have 10 years, and we need to start now.
Thank you, Mr. Helfrich.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, please, Mr. Grijalva.
we've been waiting 14 years for this. As far as everybody that I've talked to, they're excited. I mean, I wish Mayor Gomez was here. He was the one that would really try to spearhead it. It helps us with jobs. It helps us with our economy. But to those comments, I think it's more appropriate, especially for city employees, to bring these up at another time before this meeting with our city manager or with council and the mayor. I think it's more appropriate at those times. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva. Anyone else? I'd like to let everyone know that I received word over the weekend that the property owner on the Mexican side of this property that we're proposing to donate to the GSA. They submitted their plans in Mexico City yesterday and today to start a formal donation process for that land in Mexico. So they're right there moving along with us. And then they will also, the way they work things down there, they will develop a set of documents that will produce a connector road from that to Highway 2 there in Sonora. So just by way of information for everybody so we're operating on the same page. Thank you. Hearing no more discussion, roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to ask if the council members are ready to vote electronically, if you have done that. So that's.
I'm not.
It's not refreshing.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes, do I vote on here? Because it's not, nothing's come up.
Yeah, so.
Thank you.
yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, authorizing the donation of parcel 407-69-0048, comprised of 80 acres of land and certain utilities to the United States for the construction of a new commercial port of entry, and authorizing the execution of the donation acceptance agreement with the General Services Administration, establishing severability of components of ordinance and establishing an effective date thereof.
Thank you. Item number 5, presentation discussion on the following items. Item A, Douglas Education Partnership Council on its progress meter. I don't know who's handling that, Mr. Urquijo from
Mr. Pedrosa.
Mr. Pedrosa is going to start off.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Here to present the Douglas Education Partnership Council of Douglas. Led by Mr. Dina Yama from Education Forward Arizona. She'll talk about the creation of this council and the creation of the progress meter to move our education forward here.
Selena, before you start, can I make a brief comment? You know, some of you may not think, well, why are we talking about education in front of the city council? It's our community, folks. And so this is very important that not only that it's handled in the education setting, but it's handled as a community as we lock arms together to be able to make education and improve the education and have a better society, a better community. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and City Manager. My name is Selena Gamos. I work for Education Forward Arizona. I've had the pleasure of serving Douglas for the last 10 years in the capacity. You're absolutely right. Education is a matter of quality of life and workforce development. It is not about kindergarten, little, 6, 7-year-old kids. It's really a student who's 60, 65 can still be a student. So we need to really think about education in those terms. So to give you some context, about in 2016, my organization, along with the Center for the Future of Arizona, created the Arizona Education Progress Meter. Simply because we want to find out exactly where we are as a state and where do we want to go. We put the date or the year. We want to know where we can go by 2030. And so we have some great goals. There's 7 indicators in that progress meter. And I brought this forward to the Douglas Education Partnership Council. This council was put together by Mayor Ortega and Lois Silva, who worked for the U of A Douglas campus. And there have been a number of members in this council. I have one here and 5 will be here, and these ladies and gentlemen will also speak to different parts of this presentation. So, and I thank some of you and also Austin, part of the council as well. So again, we just don't have education partners within the council. We have people from all sorts of backgrounds. So in that, I'm not going to talk too much. So I will go ahead and hand the baton to one of my favorite business owners.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you one of our passions. As you know, education is very important. Why is it important? Because it affects a community. It affects the welfare of the whole community. Your run rate, so that's the your education brings in money because you have better paying jobs. If we have better paying jobs, that means there's more business. If we have more business, we make better educated decisions, whether it's for our healthcare, whether it's for more doctors, more employees in our community. You know, right now we were talking earlier about things that is going to be done right now with the new Board of Education. Well, we need better jobs. We need better qualifications for those jobs. And that's what we're trying to do. Because we know that new education is the foundation and it's a domino effect. It falls and it affects all areas of the community. Crime rate will be less. There's people that are going to have jobs, they're not going to be out on the streets. So when I talk about domino effect, it affects all different facets of our communities. So is it important? Yes. Good
evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Over the last year, Campus Education Partnership Council met and studied citywide and countywide data for us to develop certain metrics. And those metrics were developed based on our review of proven education milestones for learning from early childhood all the way to early college students. So we wanted to make sure that in the goals that we developed, that they were decided upon based on milestones that I've already alluded to. So we developed kind of like creating a great approach from young learners to lifelong learners. And so we developed certain goals based on the following framework. We said that goals must be ambitious, but also attainable, so that everyone in the community can want to be involved in achieving goals. We said that the goals must partner with the state of Arizona and the state reaching the state's education goals. We said that we wanted the goals to be able to be achieved by 2030 or sooner. And we said that the goals must also be sensitive to the political and economic situation of the states. And we said that the goals should be supported by different members of the community. And we also said that the goals should help close certain gaps and help ensure gains of all members.
Okay, so the first goal that you can see that we're going to talk about is the quality early learning. And I'm pretty sure that you know that early learning is important and that the brain grows, the baby develops, and then it turns into adults. And so, did you know that the brain grows 90% of what's going to be, an adult brain within the age of birth, 5 years old. So quality early is extremely important. Children with access to quality early learning opportunities are more prepared to kindergarten. They have increased vocabulary, better language, math, and reading, more positive relationships with their classmates. They are less likely to need special education services or be held back in grade, and are more likely to graduate and go on to college. Multiple studies show that quality pre-K programs generate a return on investment of $7 to $10 for every dollar invested. The benefits to communities include increased use of welfare, and social services, remedial education, and job retraining. So the number of Douglas between 3 and 5-year-olds enrolled in early learning settings is 578 right now currently. And our goal for 2030 is 878. And you need to know that preschool, it's not free in our Douglas, it's unified school district.
And I'm going to do third grade reading. Third grade reading is a very fundamental skill for the future of a student learning. I don't know how many of you know, third grade is a good indicator if your student is going to, number one, graduate from high school. Number two, he's going to go on to further education. Right now, the state of Arizona, students are not reading fluent in third grade, they are retained. So is this an important skill? Very much so. Reading is the foundation for all other school, whether it's math, science. Right now, the way education has changed drastically from when we attended school. Right now, everything is reading, whether you're doing a math problem, you're doing a science problem, social studies. So reading is the only window for our future. We know currently 18% of our students are, that's where they are, 18%. Our goal is to have 70% of our third graders fluent readers by the year 2030. So it's a strong goal, but we believe we can do it. But we need the support of the community. It's not just the teachers, and it's not just the parents. We need help us working together, coming up with solutions. How are we going to address our problems, and how are we going to reach our goal of 70%?
Our next indicator is post-high school enrollment. Currently, the city of Douglas is at 57% of high school students who enroll in some kind of post-secondary education the semester after graduating high school. So if you're asking now, why is that an issue, or why is that an indicator? Well, unfortunately, Arizona currently ranks near the bottom among all states in the percent of high school graduates who continue their education the year after completing high school. Students who delay higher education are at greater risk of never receiving a degree or credential compared to students who enroll immediately after high school graduation. Now, another thing you might be thinking, do they all have to go to a college or university? No. Do you need a plumber? Yes. Do you need an electrician? Yes. We're just talking about students going on to some kind of education beyond high school to get some type of credential or certificate.
Now, if you need a welder, or just you can come to Coach's house. And that's the point that we want to talk about in the last goal there, which is what we call post-secondary attainment, because we want to be more inclusive of the language. So I don't people think that going to college with obviously it's just about getting a degree, but as you know, community colleges and other learning institutions beyond high school have been increasing the goals of having students that are good paying jobs just by their so that's something that's well, we did our revenue, we can see that our goal is to increase people in the working adults with a 2-year degree or 4-year degree to 40% of them, so that we can have a wild range of people. One of the ways of doing that is by partnering with local employers and other organizations that can give our students the opportunity for job shadowing, internship. We do some department of the city. We're very happy with that to have our students get job experiences and look at their lives. So thank you for that. We also want to establish more partnerships, whether it be formal agreements or just long-standing partnerships to ensure that our students are getting experience before they graduate. One of the traps that students fall in is they earn a degree and want experience and they challenge. We want to make sure that the job has some opportunities before they leave the college. So.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So as Abe was mentioning, also we want to also increase the partnerships that we have with higher education institutions. I've heard coaching colleges for them to come to coaching, but more than anything, again, we're trying to move the entire city of Berlin and the community to move forward. So within that, I know that there's a lot of as well too. So we have a lot of higher education opportunities for a lot of them. So definitely we're exposing them to them. Just like next week, we're having a college, where we're creating potential universities that come from nearby and some of them that are on platforms as well too. So we see that once people get the opportunity to see and to talk to recruiters and these opportunities, then they're more about actually advantage of these opportunities and actually invest. Also, we want, and part of the thing that we do at Coaching College is that we also want students to envision themselves. So a lot of times we take them to campus visits to the university so they can see what it is like and that it is possible. And then we turn our curriculum and scholarships and any other programs that can assist them as well as they're moving through the higher education pipeline, whether it is for field, where we want to also connect them, how we said to internship opportunities. Okay. So next one. Okay, perfect. So as we see all of this, how we envision for everybody is for the community to actually see this as a very valuable tool for all. So we want for people to be inspired and actually be able to formulate them into their strategic plans and also to be able to be educated in how we implement and inter-education policies. We need to know where we stand now in order for us to be able to move forward. So I think this is one of those platforms and one of the resources that people can use and see where we stand and see the areas of opportunity that we have for all of us to keep moving forward. Also, I see this also as an opportunity for progress. So we know where we stand. There's a lot of opportunity out there. And again, we're using tactics already from different people in the community, how we can start moving the needle for us as a city. As Selena mentioned, there is an Arizona progress meeting, and that helps even for us in higher education to know where we're headed as a state. So now we want to inspire the community of Dutchman to be able to move forward as a community, as Mayor addressed it earlier. You take the community on, we want to see this as an effort and for everybody to know how and what progress we're doing and following.
Good evening, Mayor Hewish, Councilman, or City Council member. Thank you so much for listening to us. As you can see, we're very passionate volunteers on this council who all fundamentally believe in the need of education, health, and just having a healthy community. all of them. So why are we here tonight? To really kind of share our work with all of you, these concrete core metrics that we're going to be following. But again, we're a group of volunteers and we're asking for the charter led by those of you here in this room in front of us to kind of represent, represent the mission and kind of take it forward. So what are some of the things the council members might be able to do? Is we want you all to be visible at events, maybe volunteer to read some of the classrooms in school. Have the Douglas PM on privacy on our website. So we're talking a little bit more about these goals that we've set. Support in our participate in our teacher appreciation. We have our children who've been all day long, and so we love. As far as what parents can do, I think we all know, just having a home, literature, life, these and nephews, whatever, we can start to inspire our children to love education. So we thank you very much for your time. Listening to us on the mission, if you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to one of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have a little bit of time. Anybody from the council have a question that comes to mind right now? For this fine group? Yes, Mr. Shelton.
I don't know, I taught school for 33 years and 18 years in administration, but this past year, I've either gotten kind of working, what you guys are saying. I've made sure that there's been two people from my former students that we got either a permanent job or a job going to school or whatever. Two at Western New Mexico, one at the city of Douglas, two at New Mexico State, two at Cochise County, one in Yavapai County, and one custom agent I really put through. And it's funny, I even took one of them out to eat in Socorro, New Mexico yesterday, but my heart is with education, and I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I've been out of education a year and a half, but I still keep in contact with a lot of my students, either seeing them or I know their parents, and it's neat to know, when was it, like 4 years ago, more students from Douglas High School were admitted to the University of Arizona than any other high school in the state. And I know a lot of our young men and women here go into the military, so that wasn't considered in what you guys were talking about. But there's a number, let's say maybe 15 to 20 will go into one of the forces there. And my heart is still with education and trying to help a lot of these kids out that don't have, at least most of them don't have parents to encourage them, and don't have the background. But I know they have the brains, and I know that they're the students here at Douglas are so respectful that we have at the high school. You can't even believe it. There's another larger high school in Cochise County, and I've known about 6 or 7 teachers that have taught in both over there and here, and all of them prefer the Douglas students over there because they're so respectful. And they want a future, and their parents want them to be better off than they are. So my heart's in with you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Mrs. Acosta?
Yes, thank you. This council partnership for education. I've spoken to a couple of you about this, but I have an idea of helping working parents that want to get into back to school and get a whether it's a degree or whatnot. I'm lucky enough that I have a very good support system, which I'm able to currently attend school and participate in all these functions. But I think, a lot of this too goes back to, the home structure and just maybe parents, I know my parents, speaking from experience, they knew that higher education was important, but I don't think they understood how to convey that to us, to their kids. And I just really think that there's a lot of parents like that. My parents weren't the only ones and still aren't the only ones. So I have a couple of ideas about how maybe we can reach out to working parents that don't have the time to maybe, go to school while kids are at school, and the evenings are usually dedicated to the children. But thank you so much for this. And I wholeheartedly agree that this is a community effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. Anyone else?
Mr.
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Grijalva.
I just wanted to commend these individuals. I'm part of the group too. A lot of them, right after work, they go to these meetings to see how we can help our community. Some travel from out of town. And we always get asked, we need jobs. And a lot of the time, but what kind of jobs? And then we hear, my classmates, they've been telling me, well, I'd love to come back to Douglas, but you don't have the jobs that we need. Young adults that graduate, I want to stay in Douglas with my family, but this career, I can't advance it in Douglas because you don't have the education or the jobs. This is where this partnership is very important, to keep them here, to keep our kids here, our siblings, our family here, so we could grow our community together instead of waiting until they retire, because by that time, that's a long time that you lose because they're somewhere else. Even in Phoenix, that's a long drive. So I want to thank you all. I'm very proud of this group, and to the mayor's point, we can only get this done as a community, so working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva. Mr. Lindeman, please.
thank you, Mayor. I wanted to also express my thanks, but let me just say, and this is probably preaching to the choir, that we really have to start supporting candidates that will support education in this state. I've been here 36 years, and we can't do much, even though we try, without the support of our legislators. So let me just put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindeman. Anyone else? One thing I'd like to ask staff to do is to make sure that we coordinate somehow with our purchase of library books for the early grades, kinder, first, second, and third, so that we can have those available. And breathe. Okay. Sorry. I'm getting old. So pre-K on up, if we could coordinate with either the school district or with this group to find out which books are appropriate, so we can have them ready in the library and encourage. So they won't be like myself, who finally found the library my senior year. And I know they kept moving it every year, and I couldn't find out where it was at. So finally found it my senior year. And good old Miss Welcome welcomed me in. Thank you so much for your presentation. Item number 5B, Parks and Recreation Master Plan by Pros Consulting. Ms. Smith.
I'm really excited about this. And Pros Consulting Mike Beth on the line. Mike. So Mike will walk us through the development of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
By way of background, this year Post Consulting was awarded the bid for the development of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Throughout these couple of months, staff have been working with consultants to develop the project to provide a vision for the future. Key components of this comprehensive planning process will be conducted by research and public involvement and the development of recommendations. All aspects of the department, Parks and Recreation, activities with a focus on facilities and capital. The goal of tonight's presentation is really to walk you through the process you need some insight and feedback from you. So without further ado, Mike, you're gonna share your screen.
You got it. Good evening, Mayor, Council, city staff, members of the public. First of all, congratulations on the port of entry. That is a big deal and obviously a long time coming for you all. And so this evening, I just kind of wanted to share my screen and walk through with you kind of the major components, considerations, and the process that we will undertake to develop the Park and Recreation Master Plan for your community. Oh, it says that my screen sharing is disabled. There we go. Thank you much. Appreciate it. So let me make this a little bit bigger for everybody. So tonight, I just kind of wanted to introduce Pros Consulting and myself, speak a little bit about some of the influencing factors, some of the information we've gleaned so far about the city of Douglas and your community, talk to you about community engagement, the operational tasks that we'll accomplish, inventory and assessment, along with appropriate level of service, which I'll discuss when we get there. Cost estimating and funding, and of course the project timeline, and then any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions that you may have. So the team is really, it starts with you all. It starts with the community. It starts with leadership, and really recognizing that park and recreation a system, programs and services are only as good as the community's need for them. At the end of the day, you can't be everything to everybody, and I don't know any community that can be, simply because resources are always limited. But at the end of the day, trying to understand the community values as it relates to parks and recreation is going to be paramount to this project. Pros Consulting, Pros has been in business for 26 years. And all we do as park and recreation agencies, 95% of our work is at the municipal, city, county level. We do work for state parks, but we primarily do work all over the country and in Canada, as well as we do have some work going on in Mexico as well. So we have been around for a while. I myself have been in the park and recreation business for 31 years. I spent about 22 on the city side of the table. I affectionately refer to myself as a recovering park and recreation director. And I've been doing consulting for about 9 or 10 years. And then our trusted partner, ETC Institute, their role is going to be really behind the scenes, and they are going to administer on our behalf and your behalf a statistically valid survey to really help drill down to what the needs of the community are. So just a little bit about you all. Again, keep in mind that this information is from the Environmental Systems Research Institute. They are the global leader in demographic and market data. And the nice part about using Esri, as we like to shorten it, is the fact that they update their information annually. So the information I'm sharing with you this evening regarding demographics and trends, recreation trends in your community, was updated by Esri in just the end of June of this year. So just about 4 months ago. That said, I want to be completely respectful that if there is any disagreement with any of the data, that we are happy to coalesce any other information that you may have that may be more locally adapted, especially considering the recent ordinance that you just passed this evening related to the port of entry. So a little bit about your population. It's going to be, I know the numbers seem, the bars seem a little crazy, but at the end of the day, you're going to be somewhere in that neighborhood of 15 to 16,000 folks. Back at the 2010 census, you were about 17,600. The estimate, this US Census was about 16.5, and you're right at about that now. It does show a slight decline over the next 15 years. As well as with your households. But again, this is information that is really important. And so we want to get it right. One key component I want to point out is that your household size is a little bit larger than the average US household size. Regarding your age segmentation, because different walks of life at different ages have different needs, it's really important to recognize that you're a community that is really balanced. You have about 25% of your population that is under the age of 18. 26% of your population here is around the young adult age, another 23% adults or middle age, and then only about 25% of your population is at the 55 and older. This is you trend younger, and though you are going to become a little bit older, your youth population is still going to be in the mid-20s, looking 15 years out, and your 55 and older population is still going to be well below the US average. So there's not any specific age group or age block or life mode that this plan is going to be able to focus on. We've done work all over Arizona, and probably the community closest to you that we've done work in is Oro Valley, which is just outside of Tucson. They have about 50% of their population as a 55 and older. So again, having a balanced age segmentation really means that you have to be very cognizant of the different life modes associated with age and how that plays out into recreational needs. In terms of race, this is another variable that we do like to consider, because race really, in many cases, equates to culture, and there are absolutely cultural preferences associated with different or recreational preferences that are associated with culture. You're currently at about 40%, 39% of your population is white alone, but your second largest racial segmentation is 2 or more races, or what we would refer to as kind of blended family or biracial families. And what's really important to recognize is that you're a diverse community. And this is certainly something that, again, we will need to take into consideration as we work through this master plan. And you know this, but you're far below the average US white alone population by about 20%. The Hispanic population is not a major census tract as defined by the US Census. However, it is a subset of every other major tract. So you can be white alone and Hispanic. You can be 2 or more races and have Hispanic origin. And as you know, your community is heavily Hispanic. About 85% of your community right now can claim to be of Hispanic or Latino origin, and that number will grow to close to 90%. And of course, you are well above the average associated with the US Hispanic population. In terms of comparative income, you're a little bit lower than Arizona and the US. And this is important to recognize because in communities that have varying degrees of disposable income, This ties back to what I'll call kind of fees and charges associated with programs and services and entries to facilities such as pools or potentially a recreation center in your community. So it would tend to lean towards initially kind of a social service model. And I don't mean that in any derogatory way, but I think it's really about activating and engaging your community and worrying less about what your annual revenue take is from park and recreation services. Some trends that I just want to share with you. We update this information annually. The national trends are gleaned from the Sport and Fitness Industry Association. These are the top 5 activities in the country, and I love to throw pickleball up there only because it is continued to become one of the fastest growing, based on percentage, fastest growing sports in the country. But basketball is number 1, golf is 2, tennis 3, baseball 4, soccer 5, and then pickleball is really towards the end of the middle of the spectrum when it comes to general sports. However, it is continuing to grow, and it is a sport that is here to stay. I made a reference last week that LeBron James has recently invested in a professional pickleball. And so I think that if LeBron James is investing in pickleball, that kind of gives you an indication that it's here to stay. In terms of local trends or participation levels, so we have a lot of different sports here. And we kind of compare the blue, which is you all, to the percentage of population that participates in any of these sports in the country. So you do see that soccer is a little bit above the US average in terms of population participation percentage. But in many other activities, you might be a little bit lower. One of the things I want to recognize is that this is not in any way, shape, or form the last and only piece of data. This could simply be an indication that if basketball is, say, 1.9% lower than the US average, does your community have opportunities to play basketball? That's going to be a big deal as we kind of get through this. And so we'll start to understand need, importance, and unmet need. Some of these numbers, certainly could just simply be depressed or suppressed by lack of opportunity. And doing a park and recreation master plan will unlock some of that, data and point you in that direction. In terms of fitness, by far the most participated activity. You can talk about sports, you can talk about outdoor recreation, you talk about fitness, but by far the number 1 most participated activity in the country is fitness walking, which is why trails always seem to be a really high priority for communities. Add in the fact that you have another 50.7 million people that are running and jogging for exercise, and you start to recognize that almost half of the country has a need for trails. When we look at a variety of activities associated with you all against the US, again, you can see Zumba is actually a little bit higher than the US, but many of what I would call some of the other fitness activities that we typically look at are certainly below the US averages. When we look at outdoor recreation, hiking is by far number 1. And then, of course, you get into biking, which also uses trails. So when you think about, let me just go back here, you think about 114 million, 50 million, and then another 44 million people that bike. You're talking about 200 million people in this country that participate in activities that typically look at and wanting trails. Again, just underscoring the fact why trails typically becomes a high priority in almost every community that we work in across the country. Again, a little bit lower in terms of your participation associated as compared to the US. We can certainly compare these numbers to the county. We can certainly compare these numbers to the state of Arizona. But again, I just kind of wanted to share some general information before we really start diving into the project. So as I said before, community engagement is going to be absolutely paramount to driving the bus. Community need, community desires, unmet needs are certainly going to be the foundational building blocks around which we develop this, master plan. So we are going to develop a project website. We're actually in the process of developing this now. This is just a screenshot from the Casa Grande's master plan, which we're currently working on right now. But this is not only going to be a place where we post all of the information along the way, but it's also going to be an opportunity for the public to continually participate and provide feedback to us. In Oro Valley, for example, we had over 1,200 different emails come across associated with their park and recreation master plan. In Casa Grande, I think we've had close to 300. So it does become an opportunity for the public to provide feedback in terms of needs, wants, desires, unmet needs. We occasionally will get an email that comes through the project website about a maintenance issue that's currently in a park. So it can serve a couple of different purposes, but really this will become kind of the repository of all the information associated with the plan, where the public can continually go back to. And we in turn will obviously continue to monitor any participation and feedback that we get through the website. There's kind of a big thing that we want to make sure that everybody understands is that there's kind of 4 different people in your community when it comes to parks and recreation. There are aware users. So that means they are absolutely aware of the fact that what they're using in terms of parks and recreation is a part of the city of Douglas. There are also non-aware users. In other words, they're using a park, a trail, participating in programs, but they may not necessarily be equating that back to what I would call the city of Douglas. And then there's also non-users. There are people that are aware of what you offer, and but they don't use it for one reason or another. So understanding what those barriers are that are in place for folks that are not using your system is going to be really important. And then, of course, there are always the folks that are exceptionally busy, don't have time to participate, or are just not aware of what you offer. And so they're not aware and they're non-users. There are also barriers to that as well. And that could just simply be communications, marketing, and making the community aware. We have a lot of tools in our toolkit. We are going to do focus groups. We're going to do public meetings. Those public meetings are going to be done hybridly, both, so that we're doing them in person, like you're doing this council meeting now, but also broadcast them over Zoom. And we are going to use 2 different surveys as part of this. One will be a statistically valid survey, and I'll talk on that in a bit. It will be offered in both Spanish and English. And then we will also, after the statistically valid survey is over, we will repeat the survey, but we will open it up to the community as a whole. And so we will end up kind of using this information in such a way and blend it together. And of course, kind of weighting the statistically valid survey. So a little bit about the statistically valid survey. It will be done, as I mentioned, in both Spanish and English. We are going to have a target of at least 250 household surveys. Now, I am more than happy to share with you the 2 or 3 page algorithmic methodology that ETC Institute uses. I've always found it as a great sleeping aid. But I'm happy to kind of share that with you to give you an understanding of how they will go about administering the survey. That said, the statistically valid survey has two very specific charges. It has to be geographically balanced. In other words, we have to have surveys from across all corners of your community. And we would expect that in areas where you have denser populations, that we would have more surveys returned. In areas that you have less population, we would expect less surveys returned. But it also has to be demographically balanced and representative of your community as well, across age segmentation, ethnicity, income levels, and so on and so forth. One quick note about a statistically valid survey. I've had to do, obviously, a lot of different research and explaining the methodology. But one quick anecdote that you could probably Google in terms of what makes a survey statistically valid. If you were to ask a community of 1 million people if they liked chocolate ice cream, vanilla ice cream, strawberry ice cream, or Neapolitan, you would have to have 375 surveys returned in order for it to be statistically valid, so long as it was geographically and demographically in line with your community's population density, as well as all of the U.S. Census numbers. So we will also cross-tabulate the survey and the needs associated with it by household type. And this is really about life modes and ages, because you may end up with citywide priorities, but there may be other priorities that are really important to families with young kids or families with teenagers. And that in turn will give the department an opportunity to kind of target market and hone in on specific age groups or different life modes when we speak to high priorities. So one of the big things that we are going to do is recognizing that this is going to be a lot of information and a lot of data along the way. So we are committed to presenting this master plan to you in chunks. So as we reach different milestones, whether it be public needs assessment, technical findings related to park assessments and level of service, recommendations, implementation, and then of course the final plan, we want to be able to do that because number one, it is a lot of information and a lot of data, but number two, we want your feedback along the way. And this is staff, this is the community, this is city council. And so that when we get to that last meeting, when we're in front of you for adoption, there's no stone that hasn't been unturned or turned over. We want to make sure that when we get to the end, that everybody is fully understanding the plan, the strategic direction that it's going to point you in, and more importantly, the why. And of course, the next steps. So we're committed to these kind of series of meetings to allow everybody the opportunity to weigh in on what it is that we're gleaning through the master plan process. We'll establish prioritized needs, needs that are high priority, medium priority, low priority. We will do this for both facilities and amenities and programs and services. The one thing that I will point out right now is that sometimes there's not complete alignment between the priorities that come from programs and services and the priorities that are associated with facilities and amenities. The reason that that alignment doesn't always exist is that programs and services are the formal programs that a department puts out and asks people to register for or sign up for. There's a lot of park and facility amenities that allow people opportunities to participate in what we call self-directed activity. So I'll use the walking for exercise as an example. Yes, there could be walking clubs, but most people do end up just walking for exercise on their own or riding a bike. And so there may not necessarily, as we go through this, be complete alignment between programs and services and facilities. but we will draw the conclusions from the information, align what we need to, and then of course, for programs and services, but then of course, recognize that there are going to be facilities and amenities that are just meant for people to go out and use. Walking trails, playgrounds are a really good example as well. Operational tasks, you know, a lot of credit to Jen for including this. The reason that we love to have operational tasks be a part of a Parks and Recreation master plan is one of the barriers to implementing a Park and Recreation master plan is staff's capacity to do so. The other thing is that there are very specific standards that speak to best practice in terms of managing programs and services, as well as managing the infrastructure in a park system. So those have to go hand in hand in order for you to provide high quality parks, facilities, amenities, as well as programs and services. So we will do a program and service assessment, and we'll look at a lot of different variables associated with that. We will also do a maintenance assessment. And again, this is a little bit more linear and a little bit more straightforward. It's about task frequency, staffing levels, funding, as well as obviously all of the assets in your system that we have to kind of, you know, that have to be managed and maintained. In terms of inventory and assessment, we'll do an inventory and assessment of your park system to identify obviously everything that you have, but kind of, you know, its condition. I guess I'll use an example. A playground is typically meant to last about 15 years. Do you have playgrounds in your system that are 5 years old, or do you have playgrounds in your system that are close to 20 years old? That will be some of the evaluation that we will go through. So we will look at this both through not just kind of capturing numbers, but we'll look at it through the condition of your assets, and also be able to look at it through the lens of the maintenance and operational aspects of parks maintenance as well. All of this kind of starts to translate to what we call level of service, and I'll spend a lot more time on this later. But at the end of the day, the idea is to understand what you have and what that level of service is. Using a lot of different variables, we'll come up with a recommended level of service that may or may not increase the footprint of your park system. And ultimately, that kind of starts to show what your need for park and recreation amenities are going to be. So we'll do this for parks, but we'll also do it for things such as athletic fields, playgrounds, recreation centers, and so on and so forth.
Hey, Mike, thank you
yes.
for that part of the presentation. Can you wrap it up? I know Mayor and Council, they have an executive.
Oh, yeah,
item
sure.
that
No
they'd like to
problem.
go to.
No problem.
But I'd like to get their feedback where we are as of today.
Okay, sounds good. We'll also kind of map your level of service. One thing that's really important is that we are going to do this through the lens of a total cost of ownership financial plan, the capital investment, the operations, maintenance, and then of course the life cycle replacement. We will then divide your capital improvement plan into 3 buckets. Things that just need to be life cycle replaced, where there's strategic opportunities within your own park system to add services. And then lastly, this is kind of the bigger bucket, which is build new or expand your system. We'll summarize it by those tiers, and then we'll end up with kind of a funding strategy for the plan that's specific to your community. And then this is kind of the general timeline. So the kickoff is really internally going to be next week with staff. Community kickoff will be in December, hybrid. And long story short, we expect to be back in front of you with adoption sometime in about a year. So at that point, I will stop sharing my screen and take any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions you have.
Does anybody on the council have any questions at this time?
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Balanego, please.
I'd just like to thank him for his presentation, and it's a lot of details and a lot of things for us to consider. Especially if we're looking forward to a master park, if that's what, but I don't know if we have the property, the city has the property to adopt such a big undertaking of this sort. But I know Jennifer's and her task force will be more than grateful for the opportunity to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Balanego. Anyone else? Hearing none, thank you, Mike, for that fine presentation. We appreciate it. Ms. Smith, thank you very much. Move on to item number 6, discussion decision to call for and conduct an executive session under the authority of ARS 38-431.03 subsection A 3, 4, and 7 to consider its position, instruct its representatives, and obtain legal advice regarding updates related to the consideration of real estate purchase and or acquisition. May I have a motion to enter an executive session?
Mayor.
Yes, Ms. Morales.
Executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Morales, second by Mr. Lindeman to adjourn into executive session. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. We enter executive session at 6:56 PM. Ready? We're back out of executive session. May I have a motion to adjourn the executive session? Yes, Ms. Morales.
Executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Morales, second by Mrs. Acosta to adjourn the executive session. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it. We stand adjourned from executive session at 7:43. Item number 7, update direction regarding potential real estate purchase or acquisition. We'd like to direct staff to continue negotiations to purchase property for economic development purposes. And also direct staff to proceed on the lawful foreclosure process of lien properties that the city has at this point in time. Item number 8, adjournment. May I have a motion?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shelton, second by Mrs. Morales to adjourn this meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it. We stand adjourned at 7:44.